After Peter Griffin made the decision to pursue college football, he turned out to be one of the best players in the entire country.
Yay! Now I can fist bump with black guys.
Nailed it, Peter. There you go.
Yeah, we going to the club tonight?
Not you.
Okay.
And he was so great that he not only won Player of the Year, but eventually won the Heisman Trophy as a sophomore, along with leading Boston College to their first national championship against Old Dominion, where Peter would lead them to a victory, bringing Boston College to the top of the college football world. In his junior season, after leading Boston College back to the championship, they would lose to Oregon. And after having 3 incredible seasons in college football, Peter Griffin had made the decision that it was finally time to take his talents to the NFL. But now that Peter has entered his name into the NFL draft, it's time for him to get ready for the NFL Scouting Combine. And I'm not gonna lie, Peter might be wearing a waist trainer or something right here, but that's okay. Because Peter came out here in this 40-yard dash, and he was actually surprising some people. He ended up being able to finish out with a 4.39, way better than what a lot of people expected him to run. But all those years of college football training were being put to good use today, because Peter also did a pretty good job on the bench getting 20 reps, and his shuttle time was impressive for his size with a 4.22. And by the end of the combine, he was actually being looked at as a mid-first rounder, which is pretty good for a running back. But now it is time for the NFL Draft. And Peter was really surprised because it actually didn't take long for him to hear his name come off the board. As with the 5th pick in the NFL Draft, Peter Griffin was selected by the New England Patriots. And this was perfect for Peter because this was his favorite team. It's not too far from his home, and he knows that New England needs a running back. But now Peter is ready to get into his first NFL action because it's time for the preseason. He and the Patriots are about to go out there and take on the Saints, and Peter was doing a great job hyping up his teammates before the game.
All right, I'm ready. Come on, good game, everybody. Yeah, come on, good game. Let's get out there. Let's do it. Yeah, 110%, everybody. 110%. Yeah, come on, let's go. Good game.
And you know, it already felt just like his college days. Peter was doing an excellent job helping to move the sticks for his team, eventually bringing them all the way down the field and into the end zone for a touchdown to put the first points on the board for New England. But it didn't stop there, because as Peter got more comfortable, he was out there celebrating his way into the end zone for another score, despite the fact that Drake May was not happy with him showboating.
Damn it, Griffin. I said no showboating.
And Peter only made it worse after driving his car all over the field at the halftime kickoff, causing a 2-hour delay in the game to get the field fixed.
All right, enough messing around, huh? Let's play this game. Let's play some football.
Peter was out there playing extremely well, but he was celebrating a lot while doing it. And this would actually be a game where the Patriots would lose 21-14. And unfortunately, it would be some bad news for Peter right after the game.
Griffin, you're fired.
For what?
I talked to the coach, and he's selling your contract to another team. And the only one that'll take you is the worst football team in Europe, the London Silly Nannies.
Peter Griffin was traded to one of the worst teams in all of football, the London Silly Nannies. And as soon as he got there, Peter could immediately see just how soft of a team this was.
Excuse me. Hey there. Hi. I'm Peter Griffin. I'm your new player. Oh, yes, Peter. Welcome to the Silly Nanny. This is our team.
If you marry me, I'll be for you and great for you. If you marry me...
Oh, crap.
But you know what? It was all good though, because Peter had an excellent idea to help get his team ready for their upcoming game. And in practice, he was proving that he was definitely their biggest asset, literally and figuratively. And they're definitely going to need Peter because it turns out that their next preseason game is actually against the New England Patriots. Drake May was leading his team into London, and Peter was hoping he could walk away with the victory. This Patriots defense started out playing pretty tough against Peter, but he was helping to move the sticks in the running game and in the passing game, bringing his team well past midfield, but eventually having to settle for a field goal. But it seemed like the next drive was going to be different, because Peter was breaking off tackles in the backfield and even said, "Hey," helping to pick up not only a first down, but a touchdown to bring his team the lead in this game. And as you can see, Peter was really feeling himself. And this type of energy continued as Peter kept making plays to get his team in scoring position. And for whatever reason, he felt like he had to put the ball through this poor guy's chest, but whatever it takes to win, I guess. And by the end of the third quarter, Peter was absolutely dominating this game, bringing his team all the way down the field once again. And he was really making New England feel like they shouldn't have got rid of him so quick. Because after Peter Griffin goes on to help win this game 20-10, a lot of people around the league realized that Peter deserved to be playing for a better NFL team. So after the game, Peter actually decided to demand a trade, and the Silly Nannies fulfilled his wishes by sending him to the Denver Broncos. And now the Griffins were heading to Colorado.
Peter, watch the road.
Lois, get off my back, will you? I'm trying to watch TV.
I swear to God, sometimes I think your head's screwed on backwards.
Hey, Crashy, what are you doing down there?
And now that Peter is finally with the Broncos, the coach is clearly happy that he's there. But Peter is going to have a long way to work his way up towards being one of the best running backs in the country. But his first opportunity would come in the Week 1 opener against the Seattle Seahawks. Peter Griffin being the first-round pick to play for 3 different teams before the start of the season was unprecedented. And he had a feeling that his third team right here could be the best one, especially the way the offense was moving up and down the field despite having to settle for a field goal on their opening drive. And although playing alongside another rookie in Bo Nix would come with its struggles, sometimes Peter didn't even need Bo Nix to struggle, because he ends up fumbling right here for the first time in his career in the third quarter, eventually allowing Seattle to go up a touchdown. But Peter was doing his very best to redeem himself as he was making his way downfield once again for his team, bringing him down to the goal line where he eventually smashed his way in for the first touchdown of his NFL career. And it's looking like Peter was finally finding his home with a new team. With the game still being 10-10 late in the fourth quarter, another rushing touchdown by Peter Griffin would not only help put the Broncos on top, but ultimately help put this game away, with Peter helping to secure his first victory of the season, 17-10, and also went for over 100 total scrimmage yards in his first game. Not a bad start to his career, but Peter knows that he has a long season ahead of him. And going into week 2, they actually had some reporters at practice asking him some personal questions.
Meg was noticeably absent from the episode. Was that a team decision?
Yeah, I'm not going to be answering any questions about Meg. We'll be dealing with Meg internally.
But now Peter is ready to get into the second game of the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You can't touch me.
And to say this offense was not clicking today would be a gross understatement, because this offense only managed to put up a pair of field goals in the first half. And by the third quarter, Peter was just lucky that when he fumbled, it didn't go to the other team. But unluckily, their kicker was starting to miss field goals, so they weren't able to take a lead. But it only got worse as Peter eventually caused an interception that was taken all the way back to the crib for 6 to extend the lead for Pittsburgh. But in a game where this Broncos offense was just never really able to get anything going, it's no surprise that they would end up losing this game 21-6, with Peter not even managing to go for 20 rushing yards in this game. By far the worst performance that he's ever had as a football player. So he knew that it was time to start getting better and making some big upgrades so he could make a bigger impact on the field. And you could start to see it a little more in practice as he was barreling over his teammates. But Peter was just hoping to bring that same energy into his next game as the Broncos were set to face off against the Bucs. And early on, this seemed like a continuation of the same bullshit that the Broncos were dealing with in the last game. Because by the second half, they were already down by 2 possessions, where Peter was helping to try and lead a comeback, bringing them well past midfield, and now with his X Factor on, he was actually bringing them in position to score some points. Unfortunately, it would only be 3 points after being continuously stopped in the backfield. And by the end of this game, even though Peter was doing his best, the coaches decided to take him out at the end because they already knew that it was over, as the Broncos would go on to lose another game 3-24. And although Peter had a pretty decent performance, he had still yet to crack over 100 yards rushing in a game. And after the game, you could just see the disappointment on his face. Peter was clearly not taking this loss very well. But on the bright side, he would cheer up a little bit when he found out that Rob Gronkowski would move into his neighborhood.
Mr. Gronk? I'm Peter Griffin. I live in the house behind yours.
Hey, you guys seem great. You want to come in and eat pizza standing up?
Yeah?
But now Peter was headed back to the Northeast as his Broncos were set to face off against the New York Jets. And this was a game where Peter was hoping that his offense would start getting things going, but it didn't really seem like that was going to happen early on. Eventually though, Peter began taking over as a threat out of the backfield, and he was making a ton of plays to help bring his team all the way down the field, right down towards the goal line in scoring position. But Peter would then find out that the Jets defense was not messing around. Somehow though, the Broncos were able to put up a touchdown without him on the field. And now coming back out, Peter had an opportunity to now bring his team down the field, and he would take advantage by saying shablaka, but getting crushed immediately after, fumbling the ball, and luckily it was just out of bounds. The drive would result in 3 points, but the Broncos would end up scoring another touchdown with him off the field, and brought him back this time to go for the 2-point conversion, where Peter did his thing by powering his way into the end zone for 2 points, leading to a situation where the Broncos would eventually get the ball second in overtime. And good thing for Peter that he had plenty of overtime experience, and he was clearly using a lot of it right here as he brought his team downfield and allowed Denver to go ahead and kick a field goal, winning this game 24-21. And even though Peter had still yet to go for over 100 yards rushing, he did finally go for over 100 yards receiving at least. But there was some more good news to come after the victory, because Peter Griffin would go on to sign his first deal in the NFL with Oakley. All he had to do was just wear their visors on his helmet throughout the season. And Peter was telling his friend Quagmire about how awesome the deal was.
Well, that sounds great. And you know what? It'll be nice having a little extra cash to bet on college football. Yeah, I'd like to bet $100.
You want to pick a team?
No, just take it.
But as the season progressed, Peter knew that he had to keep progressing himself as a player in order to help his team win more games. And by week 5, Peter was ready to get into his first AFC West matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. And against this Raiders team, although Peter was struggling at times, he was doing his best to try to make things work and pick up first downs. Unfortunately, it didn't always work when his offensive line was not blocking. And on a play where Peter was actually standing on the sidelines, Bo Nix was actually able to pick up as many yards as Peter had rushed for the entire game in one play, leading Denver to a field goal. But Peter would come out in the second half doing his very best to make sure that the Broncos put up a touchdown, trucking the defender on this play as he brought his team inside the goal line. And then one play later, he absolutely obliterated a defender on his way to the end zone for a touchdown, cutting the deficit down for Denver and bringing them back into this game, so that by the time the fourth quarter came around and they were still down by 3, Peter would have a chance to lead his team back down the field for a touchdown to take the lead, and also chew the clock out on the way towards the end zone, which he was doing an excellent job of. Unfortunately though, after bringing Denver all the way down to the literal half-inch line, the coaches decided to take Peter Griffin out and kick a field goal on 3rd down, not only leading to the game heading into overtime, but eventually the Raiders would hit a 50-plus yard touchdown on the first play, putting this game away. And the Broncos would end up losing this game 20-14. On the bright side, Peter had finally broken that 100-yard barrier, going for 127 rushing yards on the ground. But Peter was more focused on trying to win a championship. And going into the next week when talking to his teammates about the loss, sometimes Peter would be so upset that he would forget who he's talking to. But it was all good because Peter was ready to bounce back in another AFC West matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. And in this game where Peter was actually the main reason why this offense was able to move the ball down the field at all, the rest of the offense was not able to get their shit together as Bo Nix was continuously taking sacks. And by the fourth quarter, Peter was barely even able to run the ball either. Luckily though, Peter was able to get things going right towards the end of the game, just in the nick of time to get himself in the end zone for a touchdown to help tie this game up with under 20 seconds left to go, sending this game into yet another overtime where Peter was driving his Broncos all the way down the field as they got the ball second, and they would eventually kick a field goal right down at the goal line to go up 3 points and win this game, with the Broncos taking care of business 10-7. But on top of a great win, Peter Griffin had his greatest performance yet, going for 193 yards on the ground. And he was really beginning to establish himself as one of the best running backs in the league. So much so that he was actually able to meet the next president, Donald Trump.
I'm sorry, can you hang on a sec? Gotta close this window. Melania's out there blowing bubbles for Eric. Tremendous, amazing.
Dad, I got one in my mouth. It tastes like soap.
But at this point in the season, Peter Griffin really felt like he was about to start hitting his stride. And you could see why as he came out against the Saints and was having another great game. And after Bo Nix took this handoff to bring himself in the end zone for a touchdown, that would actually be enough to help put this game away 12-7. And even though Peter was having the time of his life and was loving playing in the NFL, his son Chris felt differently and was pretty adamant about voicing his concerns about some of the league's issues.
Concussions are the #1 problem in football today. Recent brain scan studies have shown that brain injuries are directly linked to dementia and suicides in former players. Yet the league, you can play the music louder, but you can't silence the truth.
Regardless, Peter would continue to do the best he can to help his team win. But his next game would come down to a last-second Hail Mary that would actually turn out to be a pass interference, giving the Broncos one more opportunity to take a shot to the end zone with no time left. And after Bo Nix heaves it to the end zone, the pass falls incomplete and the Broncos go on to take another loss, as this game ends up 7-0. And Peter Griffin had to be the one to address the media after the game, and he let everybody know that the Broncos will eventually bounce back, and they definitely did against one of the best teams in the AFC North, as Peter Griffin would take his team into the end zone for a touchdown for the early lead. And even though they got stopped on 3rd down with time running out in the 4th quarter, Peter and the Broncos felt like their lead was going to be safe up until LeBron Jackson brought his team all the way down the field, scored a touchdown, and went for the 2-point conversion. And the Broncos would actually go on to lose this game by 1 point. Despite the fact that Peter had rushed for another 100-yard game, But he didn't have too much time to focus on the losses, because he had another big-time matchup against another AFC West opponent. And even though the Kansas City Chiefs were the defending Super Bowl champions, in this game it didn't really seem like they were prepared to stop Peter Griffin on defense, as he would end up rushing for 2 touchdowns in this game and over 100 yards on the ground. Unfortunately, Kansas City's offense was playing as good as always, and this game would ultimately come down to a last-second shot to the end zone that Bo Nix would actually complete, going in for a touchdown with no time left on the clock, sending this game against the Chiefs to overtime. But as awesome as it would only get worse, because the Chiefs are still the Chiefs, and they went down the field and scored a field goal, and the Broncos would go on to lose another close game by 3 points, regardless of the fact that Peter would go on to have one of his best games of the year, though he did not have 3 touchdowns. But what he did have was a little over 1,000 yards already going into a Week 11 game against the Falcons. But in this game, he was making his presence felt way more as a pass catcher, hauling in this reception before bringing his team all the way downfield across the goal line for a touchdown to tie the game up. And that would only continue as he would eventually go in for his second touchdown with under 30 seconds left in the second quarter, not only giving the Broncos the lead, but the momentum that they would carry over into the fourth quarter, where Peter Griffin would go on to smash his way into the end zone for another touchdown, ultimately putting this game out of reach, as the Broncos would go on to win this game 21-18. And as the season rolled on, Peter was having better games like this one, 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving. But that was probably because he was still putting the work in to be a better player, regardless of his wife Lois not really wanting him to play football anymore.
Well, I gotta eat, and I gotta have fun.
Peter, you're just acting out.
No, I'm not. I'm acting in.
Okay, now you're just saying the opposite of what I say.
No, I'm not. I'm saying the same as what you say.
Peter!
Lois!
Cut.
But Peter was continuing into his season going strong. And in a rematch against the Raiders, he was looking forward to taking his revenge, not only getting in for 1 touchdown, but 100 yards and another score before the end of the first half. But as great of a game that Peter was playing, he made sure to keep it going all the way until the fourth quarter, where he broke off a tackle and got in for his 3rd touchdown of the game, absolutely dominating the Raiders as he would go on to help lead the Broncos to a victory, winning 30-7, and had another game where he would come within a yard or 2 short of 200 yards. But at this point in the season, Peter was really gaining a lot of love and respect from his teammates, because now heading into week 13, Peter was on pace to rush for over 1,700 yards, potentially leading the league in rushing. And going into a game against the Cleveland Cosbys, Peter had really showed just how much he's grown as a player throughout the year, playing well enough to lead his team into overtime, where in 1 carry Peter would take this ball and flip the field position just like that, breaking off a couple tacklers on his way to the 5-yard line, where it would only be a couple plays later that he would take another handoff into the end zone for a touchdown, winning the Broncos another game. And Peter Griffin was solely responsible for this 20-14 victory, where he felt obligated to get his revenge on Deshaun Watson for everything he's done to those poor women. But as well as Peter had been playing lately, it was now time for the bye week, which meant that he could go home and spend some time with his kids.
Hey, what are you guys talking about?
Nothing. Sports. Birthday sports. No, just sports.
Oh, okay.
Maggie, you're not invited to my party.
After the bye week, Peter Griffin was the #1 rusher in the NFL, and he actually had the Broncos in a 3-team race for the division lead in the AFC West. So he went into the last few games of the regular season knowing that he had to play well in order for his team to have any chance of making the playoffs. And against the Colts with a little under 1 minute and 30 left, he did enough to get his team across the goal line into the end zone for a touchdown, giving his team the lead. But unfortunately this game would end up going to overtime, where the Colts would drive it all the way down the field and score a touchdown, putting this game away. And as the Broncos lost a heartbreaker 27-21, Peter knew that he was about 1 more loss away from being completely knocked out of the playoffs. So he was spending a lot of his free time working hard to be better, especially since he actually had a playoff elimination game coming up. Because in this game against the Chargers, whoever loses would be officially eliminated from the playoffs. But Peter let it be known very early that he doesn't intend on letting his season end before February. But throughout this game, the Chargers also made it clear that they weren't trying to go home either. Ultimately, though, this would be a game that would end up going into overtime, and with Peter actually being able to touch the ball, you might be able to guess how this game turned out. Because even though Big Back Bowles over here got called for a holding, it didn't matter considering that the Broncos would go on to win this game 13-10, in a game where Peter would have another outstanding performance, going for another 100-yard rushing and receiving. And at this point, it was looking like Peter had the chance to win the Offensive Player of the Year. He was gaining so much recognition that he and his son actually got invited to come on to Jimmy Kimmel's show.
Congratulations, it's Peter Griffin and Stewie Griffin from The Family Guy.
Family Guy. Hey, wait, I have a joke for you when you host the Oscars.
So Harvey Weinstein is watering his plants.
Now, you know, you guys can probably keep that one for yourself. Thank you, Stewie and Peter.
And you know what, with Peter looking like he was about to finish the season as the league's leading rusher, he felt extremely confident going into the last 2 games of the regular season. And against the Cincinnati Bengals, he had continued to be the dominant short yardage running back that he had been all season. And even though his offensive line wasn't really able to keep it together this game, in the end, all it would take was a little improvisation from Bo Nix to get Peter in the end zone for a touchdown, ultimately doing enough to put this game away, as the Broncos would go on to beat the Bengals 16-7. And Peter would go on to have yet another solid performance, but he would have to show up even bigger in his final game of the season, because he was entering into yet another win or go home game, this time against the Kansas City Chiefs for the division title. And this was a game where Peter had clearly taken the loss against the Chiefs earlier personally, as he would go on to break off a bunch of tacklers and find himself streaking down the sideline in open space. Now, unfortunately, he was too slow to get himself in the end zone, but that was all good, because at this point, Peter Griffin was already fired up. It would only be a couple plays later where he would get his team in the end zone for a touchdown, taking the lead over the Chiefs. But Peter would also get in for another one with less than 10 seconds left in the half, extending this Broncos lead to 2 possessions. So now at this point, this Broncos team had complete control of this game. And by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the Kansas City offense had stalled out completely. But this Broncos offense was doing the exact opposite, with the help of Peter Griffin bringing them all the way down to the goal line once again, and pounding his way across the goal line for another touchdown, despite the penalty that turned out to be offsides on the Chiefs. Peter Griffin had done more than enough to help put this game away, as he helped the Denver Broncos lock up the divisional title for the first time since Peyton Manning was the quarterback, winning this game 21-3, with Peter Griffin rushing for over 200 yards on the game. And you can tell after the game just how proud this head coach was to have Peter on this team, because he had helped lead the Denver Broncos back to the playoffs, and they were about to have an opportunity to go up against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But as far as regular season stats, Peter had an incredible season leading the league in rushing. But not to mention, he also had over 1,000 yards receiving, which turned out to account for a little over 60% of all of Bo Nix's passing yards. Peter Griffin had literally become a one-man offense, and it was nice to know that his college abilities had transferred over to the big leagues. But the entire city of Colorado was going to need him to use those abilities today, because going into their first playoff game in about a decade, they knew it wasn't going to be an easy one. They actually started this game out with Peter playing wide receiver, and it was probably because they already knew this running game wasn't going to be flourishing early on. But it seemed like the Broncos were just dealing with the case of the bad lucks in the first half, because even when they did drive the ball down the field, Peter would go on to fumble the ball right here. It got picked up by the Bengals, and they were just lucky that it didn't get returned to the house for 6. In the second half, it seemed like the Broncos' fortunes were beginning to turn, as Peter Griffin was coming up with some big-time plays to move his team in scoring position. With his X Factor on, he was finally able to move his team across the goal line for a touchdown, putting the first points on the board in this game, and giving the Broncos the opportunity to take complete control of this game once they got the ball back, still up 7. Unfortunately, they would end up getting stopped on 3rd down, but they still got 3 points to make it a 2-possession game. But with the Bengals still fighting back, all it would take was Peter Griffin to keep pounding the rock and eventually get it back in the end zone for another touchdown to effectively put an end to this game, with the Broncos escaping the wild card round 17-14, and Peter Griffin having led the way with another excellent performance. But Peter knows, based off his playoff experience, that this isn't the time to get complacent, especially since he's about to go up against the 40-year-old non-washed-up version of Aaron Rodgers in the New York Jets. So Peter knew very early on that he was going to have to do whatever it takes to get his team in scoring position, even if that meant he had to take on some big-time blocks and be the guy to get the team across the goal line later on, tying the game up at 7. But Peter knew 7 points against this Jets team most likely wasn't going to be enough. So Peter was out there leaving his heart on the field, doing everything he could, getting his team around the edge all the way downfield for a huge gain that probably would have stood if it wasn't for Big Back McGee over here messing around. Eventually, though, this game would be 7-7 late in the fourth quarter, and Peter was leading his team to a position where it was 1st and goal within the 5-yard line. And it would only be 1 play later when Peter would take this ball across the goal line for a touchdown, giving his team momentum and control in this game. And after the Jets offense failed to score a touchdown, all it would take was 1 more Peter Griffin first down to put this game away, allowing the Broncos to win this game 14-7 and send them back to the AFC Championship game. And you could see just how hyped this team was in the locker room afterwards, as this team had finally found somebody to help turn this franchise around. And in the championship game, it turns out that they would actually be matched up against the Buffalo Bills. I also can't help but notice that the Cowboys still can't make it out the second round, but that's neither here nor there because, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to get into the AFC Championship game as the Peter Griffin-led Denver Broncos is set to face off against the Josh Allen-led Buffalo Bills. And Peter Griffin had been leading his team just like he had all season. He actually ended up getting his X Factor very early on in the first quarter and was just bulldozing his way all the way down inside goal-to-goal territory. And eventually he was able to just walk across the goal line for a touchdown to take the lead in the first quarter. And Peter was expecting this Bills team to make some adjustments throughout the first half, but they clearly were not. They were putting 4 to 5 players in the box against the Peter Griffin with his X Factor on, expecting that to have any chance of stopping him. Eventually Peter would just find his way to bulldoze across the goal line for another touchdown, making this a 14-0 game before halftime, and putting Denver in great position heading into the third quarter. And Denver's momentum would actually carry on even into the fourth quarter, with Peter taking the screen pass into the end zone for another touchdown, giving Denver the 2-possession lead with only 3 minutes left in this championship game. But after the Broncos were given the ball right back with excellent field position, Peter Griffin made sure to punish the Bills for being so careless with the football. And even though I'm sure 52 is going to be feeling that later, the entire Bills organization is going to be feeling this loss because the Broncos would go on to finish this game 28-14, winning the AFC Championship game and sending the Denver Broncos to the Super Bowl. All thanks to a 200-yard and 4-touchdown performance from Peter Griffin. But there was even some greater news for Peter lying ahead because the week before the Super Bowl, he found out that he would go on to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year. And it was so cool that he actually received a message from the world's greatest father, Tyreek Hill.
And in this game, I need you to give everything that you got, like your life depends on it, for your family, for the organization, for the last name on the back of your jersey.
But going into the week of the Super Bowl, the Denver Broncos coach let Peter know just how important he had been to the team all year. And Peter had reassured the coach that he was about to go out there and leave it all on the field because this was what he had been waiting for his whole life. So he and the Denver Broncos were about to go ahead and face off against Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. And a matchup that definitely had some history between the two teams, with the 49ers having blown the doors off the Broncos 55-10 in Super Bowl 24. But Peter Griffin was looking to help flip the script this time and lead another one of his teams to another championship. And to start this game out, Peter was running angry. I think he was still mad about the time that he lost money on them losing to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So he was looking forward to giving them another loss against an AFC West opponent. But the 49ers were still the 49ers, and they caused Peter to fumble, picking it up, creating a turnover. This offense would eventually find himself back downfield, but they would only get 3 points after getting stopped on third down. Right before the end of half, though, now down by 4 points, Peter was leading his team all the way down the field through the air, setting them up with great field position for a score. He would eventually lead his team down to the 5, where he would bust his way across the goal line to finish off the drive, giving his team a bunch of momentum and giving them the 10-7 lead heading into halftime. Unfortunately, this game would stay 10-7 all the way until the fourth quarter, where Denver's drive was beginning to stall out. But now past the 2-minute warning, this Peter Griffin first down would actually start causing the 49ers to call timeouts, which meant that Peter Griffin was 1 first down away from winning a Super Bowl. And he not only got the first down, but crushed his way across the goal line for another touchdown, putting an exclamation point on not only the game, but his entire season, as Peter Griffin had just helped lead the Denver Broncos to a Super Bowl championship. And you can see just how elated this franchise is to finally make it back to the mountaintop after all those years of being in quarterback purgatory, finally claiming their spot as the #1 team in the league, all thanks to Peter Griffin. And that all becomes very clear after it turns out that Peter Griffin would go on to win Super Bowl MVP, one of the highest honors you could ever win in all of professional sports. And just like that, it seemed like Peter Griffin had done everything he could possibly do in the sport of football. And at the end of the season, Peter had his name written in the history books forever. And apparently so did Dak Prescott. Which is funny because the Dallas Cowboys got bounced out in the second round, so that's very realistic. Regardless, Peter Griffin had just had the best rookie season out of any player in NFL history. And at this point, he was just ready to get back home and celebrate the New Year's with his family.
3, 2, 1. Some animals give me boners.
But this was the story of Peter Griffin. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. But don't forget to comment down below who else you guys want to see next. And also be sure to check out some of these other stories until the next one comes out. I hope your college team was winning a bowl game this week, and I hope your NFL team is making it to the playoffs. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. But other than that, Happy New Year, and I'll catch you guys next time.